Glock owners are some of the most loyal, most informed, and most confidently wrong people in the entire firearms community. And I can say that because I am one. I carry a Glock. I trust a Glock. And I have repeated at least 4 of the myths on this list before someone smarter than me corrected me with data I could not argue with. That is the problem with Glock mythology. It is not built on ignorance. It is built on half-truths that sound so reasonable, so logical, that you never bother to verify them. And the result is millions of Glock owners walking around with beliefs about their pistol that range from slightly off to genuinely dangerous. 15 myths. Every one of them repeated daily on forums, at ranges, and behind gun counters by people who should know better. By the end, you will either thank me or want to fight me. Either way, you will know the truth. Myth number 1. Glock perfection means the gun is perfect out of the box. This is Glock's own marketing slogan turned into an article of faith. The truth is that Glocks have quality control variants like every manufactured product on Earth. Owners have documented off-center sights, gritty triggers, and occasional feeding issues on brand new pistols. Most Glocks are excellent out of the box. Some are not. The myth does real damage because it convinces new owners that they can buy a Glock, load it, and trust it with their life, without ever firing it first. You should fire at least 200 rounds through any new defensive firearm before you trust it, Glock or otherwise. Perfection is a slogan. Verification is a process. Myth number 2. Glocks do not have a safety. This one gets repeated by people who have never looked at a Glock parts diagram. Every Glock has 3 independent safeties. The trigger safety, which is the small lever embedded in the trigger face that must be depressed before the trigger will move. The firing pin safety, which is a spring-loaded plunger that physically blocks the firing pin from moving forward until the trigger is pulled. And the drop safety, which locks the trigger bar in place so that impact or inertia cannot cause a discharge. What Glocks do not have is a manual external safety lever that you flip with your thumb. That is a design choice, not a safety deficit. The safe action system means the gun will not fire unless the trigger is deliberately pressed. Calling a Glock unsafe because it lacks a manual safety is like calling a car unsafe because it does not have a hand-cranked parking brake. The engineering moved forward, the terminology did not. Myth number 3. The Glock grip angle is wrong and makes the gun point unnaturally. The Glock grip angle is 22 degrees, compared to the 18-degree angle on a 1911. That 4-degree difference is real, and it does change how the gun presents when you punch it out from a compressed ready position. But calling it wrong is not a statement about the gun, it is a statement about your training. Shooters who train exclusively on 1911 pattern pistols develop muscle memory around that specific angle, and when they pick up a Glock, the sights sit high. That is not a design flaw. That is a training adaptation. Thousands of military operators, law enforcement professionals, and competitive shooters have trained on the Glock angle and point it instinctively. The angle is different. Different is not wrong. Myth number 4. Glocks are inaccurate. This is almost always a shooter problem disguised as a gun problem. The Glock trigger has a long take-up, a rolling break, and a relatively long reset compared to a crisp single-action trigger. Shooters who have not trained on that trigger profile tend to push or pull their shots. When the same pistol is placed in a ransom rest, which removes the human variable entirely, Glocks consistently group 2 to 3 inches at 25 yards, which is more mechanical accuracy than 99% of shooters can exploit. If your Glock is not accurate, the Glock is not the problem. Myth number 5. You never need to clean a Glock. This one has a kernel of truth wrapped in a dangerous shell. Glocks are extraordinarily tolerant of neglect. There are documented cases of Glocks firing thousands of rounds without cleaning. But tolerant of neglect is not the same as immune to neglect. Carbon buildup on the breech face and in the firing pin channel will eventually cause light primer strikes. A fouled extractor will cause extraction failures. A dry slide will increase wear on the barrel lugs and frame rails. Clean your Glock. Not after every range trip if you do not want to, but regularly. Treating it as invincible is how you turn a reliable pistol into an unreliable one. Myth number 6. Glocks are invisible to metal detectors. This myth was born in 1988, when a movie character described a fictional porcelain gun made in Germany that does not show up on airport security. Glocks are made in Austria. They are made from polymer and steel, and the slide, barrel, recoil spring, locking block, pins, and every round of ammunition inside them are metal. A Glock sets off a metal detector the same way every other firearm does. The fact that this myth still gets repeated nearly 4 decades later is a testament to how powerful a movie quote is compared to basic physics. Myth number 7. A Glock 19 is the only Glock you will ever need. The Glock 19 is a phenomenal firearm. Compact enough to conceal, large enough to shoot well, 15-round capacity, fits almost every hand. But the idea that one gun solves every problem is a myth sold by convenience, not capability. A Glock 19 is not ideal for deep concealment, where a Glock 43X fits better. It is not ideal for home defense, where a Glock 17 or Glock 34 with a weapon light gives you more sight radius and capacity. It is not ideal for backwoods carry, where a Glock 20 and 10mm provides real protection against large animals. One size fits most is not one size fits all. Quick pause here. How many of these have you believed at some point? Be honest. Drop the number in the comments, and if you have a myth I missed, I want to hear it. Myth number 8. You should never modify a Glock. The purest position is that Glock designed the gun to work a specific way, and changing anything invites failure. That is partially true for critical components, but completely false for ergonomics. Adding a weapon-mounted light does not compromise reliability. Changing sights to tritium or fiber optic does not compromise reliability. Installing a magwell that improves reload speed does not compromise reliability. The purest myth prevents people from making practical improvements that make the gun more effective for their specific use case. What you should not modify on a carry gun is the fire control group, and that leads directly to myth number 9. Myth number 9. You should upgrade the trigger on your carry Glock. Installing a 3.5-pound connector, a reduced power striker spring, and an aftermarket trigger shoe on your concealed carry weapon is one of the most popular and most potentially disastrous modifications in the Glock world. A lighter trigger pull increases the risk of an unintentional discharge under stress when adrenaline is flooding your system and fine motor control collapses. Reduced power springs can cause light primer strikes with harder primered defensive ammunition. And in the event of a defensive shooting, a prosecutor can and will point to your modified trigger as evidence that you made the gun easier to fire, which reframes your defensive action as reckless. Modify your competition Glock all you want. Leave your carry gun stock where it counts. Myth number 10. Glocks fire when dropped. This myth gained traction after specific incidents with the Sig Sauer P320, and people extrapolated the concern to all striker-fired pistols. Glocks have a firing pin safety plunger that physically blocks the firing pin unless the trigger is pulled. They are also subjected to drop testing from multiple angles during production. No standard. Unmodified Glock has a documented history of drop-fire defects. Myth number 11. All Glock generations are basically the same gun. They are not. The Gen 3 has a different recoil spring assembly, different trigger mechanism housing, and different extractor design than the Gen 5. The Gen 5 introduced the Glock Marksman barrel with improved rifling, an ambidextrous slide-stop lever, the NDLC finish, a flared magwell, and removed the finger grooves. These are not cosmetic changes. They affect accuracy, durability, ergonomics, and parts compatibility. If you are buying used, generation matters. Myth number 12. Glocks are cheap because they are plastic. Polymer is not plastic in the pejorative sense. Glock frames are injection molded from a proprietary nylon-based polymer reinforced with fiberglass, specifically polymer 2. It was chosen not because it was cheaper than steel, but because it is lighter, more resistant to corrosion, more flexible under impact stress, and more consistent to manufacture at scale. The polymer frame is a deliberate engineering advantage, not a cost-cutting compromise. Myth number 13. You cannot limp wrist a Glock. Every semi-automatic pistol on Earth relies on the frame being held firmly enough to provide a stable platform for the slide to cycle against. If you grip the gun loosely enough that the frame moves rearward with the slide instead of staying stationary, the slide will not travel far enough to strip a new round from the magazine. Glocks are more tolerant of weak grips than many competitors, but they are not immune. New shooters and shooters with reduced grip strength can and do experience limp wrist malfunctions with Glocks. The fix is grip training, not a different gun. Myth number 14. A Glock will last forever without replacing anything. Recoil spring assemblies should be replaced every 3,000 to 5,000 rounds depending on caliber and load. Magazine springs wear with use and should be rotated or replaced. The slide lock spring fatigues over time. The trigger spring and striker spring are not eternal. Glocks are incredibly durable, but they are machines with moving parts, and moving parts wear. Following Glock's own recommended maintenance schedule is not being paranoid, it is being responsible. Myth number 15. A Glock will run absolutely any ammunition. Glocks are impressively omnivorous, but they are not limitless. Underpowered hand loads can fail to cycle the slide. Certain brands of steel-cased ammunition with harder primers have produced light primer strikes in guns with worn striker springs. Inconsistent overall cartridge length in bulk reloads can cause feeding issues. And running a steady diet of overpressure or +P+ ammunition through a gun not rated for it will accelerate wear on the locking surfaces, barrel, and frame. The right statement is that Glocks will run the vast majority of quality factory ammunition without complaint. That is not the same as anything, and the distinction matters if your life depends on the next round going bang. And that is the list. 15 myths, and I guarantee you believed at least 3 of them before you clicked on this video. Here is the principle underneath all of it. A Glock is a tool. It is one of the best tools in the handgun world. But the moment you turn a tool into a religion, you stop asking questions. And the moment you stop asking questions, you stop maintaining, stop training, and start assuming. Assumptions do not clear malfunctions. Assumptions do not survive cross-examination in a courtroom. And assumptions do not keep you alive when the trigger press matters most. Know your gun, not the mythology, the mechanics. And if you found even one myth on this list that you have repeated to someone else, share this with them. The correction matters. Tell me in the comments which one got you. I promise you are not alone.